Hello, everyone. Welcome to another monthly session of the Pathways Champion Initiative. This evening, we have with our guest speaker, Scott McLaughlin. And Scott will be discussing an important topic for all Toastmasters, irrespective of the level of experience you have, whether you are an experienced Toastmaster or a new Toastmaster. We all have butterflies when we get to speak. Today, Scott is going to share some insights with us. Let me introduce Scott. Scott has been a Toastmaster for over 21 years and has held the position of the club president and VP of Education numerous times for both Statistics Canada and Tunney's Toastmasters. In Toastmasters Legacy Program, Scott completed his Advanced Communicator Gold and Advanced Leadership Bronze medals. In Pathways, he has just recently completed his Effective Coaching Pathway and Presentation Mastery Pathways. Scott was the host of the podcast Table of Mentors, a podcast designed to create a dialogue on mentoring within Toastmasters. Tonight, Scott will be presenting from the Toastmasters Better Speaker series, a presentation entitled Controlling Your Fear. Fear may be common, but it does not have to stop you. My dear fellow Toastmasters, please help me in welcoming Scott McLaughlin to the virtual lectern.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. And the presentation tonight comes from the Better Speaker series. Now, the Better Speaker series is some reference material designed by Toastmasters International to guide new speakers to become better speakers. And also, if you're a well-seasoned Toastmaster who's been around for a while, it's also a good resource to revisit from time to time. In Toastmasters, learning is not a one and done. In fact, repetition is the mother of skill. So with that, I want to show you some characters I ran into when I was a child. Now, these were from different horror movies that I watched. And at the time, I know by today's standards, this may seem like very low tech, but back then when I was a kid, these were like really scary. I can't tell you how many times I watched a movie with one of these people in it and then would look under my bed or in my closet before I would go to sleep at night. But back then, it seemed so real and it was so frightening. Now, eventually, as you mature, you kind of realize that, well, basically, they're not real. It's just somebody's imagination. And I find it's interesting how often sometimes our imagination can make things seem scarier than they actually are. Now, if we were meeting live, face to face in the same room, what I would do is I would have you turn to the person to the left and to the right of you and repeat the following sentence. Move. You have nothing to be scared of, and neither do I. Now, what I want to do is I want to show you some very famous people who share one commonality between all of them. So we have Julia Roberts, an actress, Harrison Ford, an actor, Mahatma Gandhi, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Wayne Gretzky, and former British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. We have the head of Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, billionaire Richard Branson, Abraham Lincoln, Winston Churchill, guitarist Eric Clapton, and from biblical times, Moses. Now, what did all these people have in common? They all feared public speaking, and they all learned to manage it. Fear of public speaking is the number one fear that's out there. Fear of public speaking is the number one reason most people join Toastmasters. And fear of public speaking is the most Googled topic associated with public speaking. Also, fear of public speaking is the one barrier that prevents people from advancing in leadership roles and as public speakers. You cannot get anywhere until you learn how to manage that fear. Now, you've probably heard this before, but comedian Jerry Seinfeld once remarked how he had heard that the fear of public speaking is even more prevalent than the fear of death. And he found it was kind of interesting because a lot of people, if they go to the funeral, they would rather be the person in the box than the person giving the eulogy. So it's kind of ironic when you think of it that, people fear public speaking even more than they fear the fear of death. Now, I used to work at Statistics Canada, and I just love statistics. So I'm going to share some with you before we go on in this presentation. 10% of the public just love public speaking. They just love it. These are people you have trouble getting them off the stage rather than encouraging them. They are, unfortunately, in the minority. 20 to 40% of people identify as being an introvert, inward focused. 15 to 20% of people identify themselves as being shy. 7 to 13% of people have some form of social anxiety on an ongoing basis. And it's said that most people, 33.7% of us will encounter an episode of social anxiety at least once during our lifetime. 72% of people fear public speaking. And 20% of expert speakers actually are fearful of impromptu speaking. Now, what causes anxiety? What causes the fear of public speaking amongst people? Well, basically, it's if you've never done it before, it's fear of the unknown. It's not having that experience. It's not knowing what to do, what to say, how to even start a presentation if you have to. But also, there have been people who've had previous unpleasant experiences or outcomes when it comes to public speaking. I'm sure we've all been in a classroom before. You're answering a question or you're doing a presentation, and somebody at the back of the room is laughing, and we all immediately think they're laughing at us when actually may had nothing to do with us whatsoever. Now, I'm just going to give you my perspective on this. I believe the fear of public speaking is not a real fear in by itself. I call it a surface fear, which is basically supported by many, many, many fears. So public speaking, I believe, is supported by the fear of rejection. This is one of the biggest social fears there are, being rejected by our people, by the people we want to reach. Fear of failure, that we're going to mess up, we're not going to achieve our goal, is another fear underneath the fear of public speaking. Another fear is the fear of looking foolish. Fear of criticism, fear of judgment will discourage people from participating or public speaking. Fear of humiliation or ridicule. Those are bad experiences that may turn people off public speaking, or they are afraid that will happen to them. Fear of appearing boring or uninteresting is another fear that people have. So we're very conscious of our status in the world. And basically, when you're public speaking, you're putting yourself out there. So these status fears, okay, of rejection, looking foolish, being ridiculed or being humiliated or appearing uninterested, it can really discourage people from participating in public speaking. Now, another thing that happens is very often as we're growing up, we will hear messages at home or at school that really discouraged us from speaking up or even punished us from speaking us. How many times have you heard the following? Quiet, don't talk, don't speak, not another word, don't say that in front of others. How can you say that? I can't believe what you said. Keep your mouth closed. And the famous, if I want your opinion, I will ask for it. Now, I'm sure all of us have heard this to some degree or another, and maybe we've even heard worse than that. If we had more time, we could go around the room and have different messages that we've and share different messages we've heard growing up that really discourage us from speaking out. So when it comes to fear of public speaking, very often people who have that fear, they will encounter certain symptoms with that. So items such as increased heart rate, butterflies in the stomach, or feeling nausea or a glass stomach type of situation. Uncontrollable shakes sometimes people exhibit, lightheadedness, dizziness. Your body temperature may increase, and you get this rush of adrenaline going through your body. Now, this all comes from what's known as the sympathetic nervous system. So maybe you've heard this before, but basically this is the system that causes the response of fight, flight, or freeze. Now, let's use the following situation. Let's just say we're at my place tonight and we're having a barbecue in my backyard. And all of a sudden a bear shows up. Now, some of us would try to run from that bear, the flight. A few of us might try to fight the bear, and some of us would just kind of freeze at the prospect of a bear being in my backyard. And hopefully that bear will ignore us or think we're dead or not paying attention to us. Now, there is a fourth F, and that's called fawn, where somebody would actually try to make friends with the bear, offer him a steak, and hopefully the bear would not turn on him. So that's what we normally go through. Now, the thing is that in order for this to happen, what's really interesting is the threat or the perceived threat does not need to be immediate. Another interesting part is that the threat can be either real or imagined. You will still get those same reactions physiologically. And they're also individual. So what gets me going would not get you going, or we would experience the symptoms to different degrees based on our previous experiences. And the thing is, from the sympathetic nervous system, is that rush of adrenaline and all those symptoms, they can remain in your system afterwards for hours, even days, maybe even weeks. There's a book out there that's called Zebras Do Not Get Ulcers. And basically what it says is that in the jungle, when a zebra is chased by a lion, they have that rush of adrenaline. Like they're just scrambling to stay alive and get out of there. But the minute they are safe, they go back down to being calm and relaxed, and all that adrenaline is gone. They don't have nightmares about the lions. They don't go to therapy about the lions. They don't talk about it. That's where we are different as humans. We kind of carry this stuff onwards for a little while. Now, in this state, you cannot think clearly and you cannot perform at your best. So what we have to do is we want to get to what's called the parasympathetic nervous system. And this is where you rest, relax, and you are calm. That's where we want. That's where we'll think better, and that's where we will perform better. So how do we get there? Well, we're going to explore that right now. So these are different techniques for managing anxiety. So the first one, prepare and practice your presentation. Now, if you do not practice and you do not prepare your presentation, you've actually earned yourself the right to be nervous before giving it. So you want to really eliminate that. You want to know your content as well as you can. The next part is rehearse in front of family and friends so you get used to it. Deliver speeches before your clubs or take on minor speaking roles. In Toastmasters, they have what's called systematic desensitization. That's a bit of a tongue twister for me. But basically what it is, we start you off with simple roles, small roles. And if you do it great, that's fine. And if you don't do so well, we'll get you some feedback, some coaching so you can do it better. But after you've been successful, then you can take on bigger roles, more expansive roles, larger speeches. And part of this is giving speeches or presentations anytime you can outside of your club to other groups. The more you invest in small speaking roles, it does have a cumulative effect on your progress within Toastmasters. Now, the next one is visualization. Now, with visualization, this is done very often by athletes. It's done by performers. And this is where you envision giving your presentation perfectly. No mistakes, no errors. You remember everything. And you envision the audience response to your presentation as being favorable. Now, this works in the positive, and believe me, this also works in the negative. If you envision things going wrong, I'm going to tell you, they will go wrong. They will show up. What you fear will appear. So, and I can tell you about this. One time I was asked to be a test speaker in an evaluation contest. And I had just given a speech that I had given the week before in my club with no problem. So what I did is in between is I made one little change to that whole speech. And I worried all week about, well, what about if I forget the change I made? What about if I stumble? What about if I freeze? And sure enough, that's what happened. I gave that test speech and I was blank for about 30 seconds. What I envisioned going wrong did happen. So it's something that you want to avoid. Envision things working perfectly and your performance going smoothly. Now, some other items that will help you relax is isometric exercises. So these are exercises where you do muscle contraction to kind of like force pressure and then you release. So there's many different exercises you can do. They're all online, but we'll just do one right now between us. And this is a very simple one. I just want you to take your thumb and your index finger and just squeeze them together as hard as you can. Okay, as hard as you can. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Now release. So you probably feel that release right away, right? Okay, so we can do this in larger muscle groups. And like I said, there's different exercises. There's some progressive relaxation exercises out there online too, where basically you're flexing and you're releasing. Bigger muscles, you get more of a benefit to it. Also, there's breathing techniques that will help you lower your anxiety. So deep diaphragmatic breathing. So that's where you inhale through the nose with your mouth closed. And as you're inhaling, your abdomen is expanding. So you inhale, and then when you exhale, you breathe out through your mouth, almost as if you're blowing through a straw. But your exhale will be twice as long as your inhale. So we'll just kind of do a couple of these. So inhale, 1, 2, 3, hold it, exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. You always want the exhale to be longer than the inhale. Now, what this does, this will reduce your blood pressure and it will reduce your heart rate at the same time. They say if you're in a particularly stressful job, if you stop every hour on the hour and you do about 6 of these, you'll find yourself calmer throughout the day. So again, inhale through the nose, and your abdomen is expanding. Exhale twice as long as if you're blowing through a straw. Okay. Now, the last one is meditation. Meditation has been around for thousands of years. And I think it's just starting to get really taken seriously by a lot of different groups because recently a lot of top performers, whether it's in the arts or whether it's in business, and even speakers are coming out and they're saying this is part of their daily practice, and they find it helps calm them down and it also helps them clear their mind so they can think more clearly and more better. So I would suggest at some point for you to go online. There's many guided meditations that you could go through to help you calm down and reduce your anxiety. And the other thing it does, it also helps your creativity flourish. Now, we're going to go into the bonus section. Okay. Be aware of your self-talk. If you are nervous about public speaking, keep it to yourself. Really don't talk about it, because the more you talk about it, the more you identify yourself with the identity of being a fearful public speaker. And that's what you don't want. So watch your self-talk. There's also what's called thought replacement. That's where you take a negative or a disempowering thought and just replace it with a more empowering thought. So rather than I'm a nervous public speaker, you can replace it with I'm an excited public speaker. I want to bring value to my audience. Always try to replace a negative or disempowering thought with a neutral or a more empowering one. Now, there's also the process of writing down your fears. Now, apparently, if you write down the fears that you have associated with public speaking, it creates a bit of a distance between your mind and your actual fears. And then you can look at them later more objectively and kind of, you know, they will not have the same effect on you. Act as if, adopt a powerful body language. Now, what you want to do is think of your favorite public speaker. Think of a powerful speaker, and adapt the body language, the gestures, the tone of voice that they would use. Act as if, then you become. I know on the internet, there's a professor called Amy Cuddy. She did a TED talk on body language, power poses during presentations. Now, she says if you stand in the superhero pose, that's you stand up, your chest is out, your chin is up, and your hands are on your hip. Actually, what that does is it lowers the cortisol in your body. So you feel powerful, you will act powerful, and you will present powerful. Reframe the experience. A lot of people will reframe this terrifying experience as a performance. So don't think of your presentation as a performance, but maybe you want to think of it as a conversation where you're sharing between you and your audience. It kind of demystifies it a little bit and kind of like lowers the urgency. Reduce your body temperature. Now, if you have a bottle of cold water or a can of, some kind of a drink that's cold, put it on your wrists where your arteries are. So it kind of cools down your temperature, or put it at the side of your neck. You want to get that body temperature down. Another thing is contact. Now, before speaking, if possible, if you shake somebody's hand or you give them a high five or you give them a hug with permission, of course, what that does, it releases oxytocin, and oxytocin is counteractive to cortisol. Cortisol is a stress hormone, and oxytocin will reduce it. If you're at home and you're presenting from home and you have a dog or a cat or a child close by, just pet them or give them a hug. So we'll have the same effect. Now, another thing to do is bring your attention to the present moment. A lot of us, prior to the talk, we're always thinking about what's going to happen in the future. No. What you need to do is you need to bring your attention right now to the present moment. So there's different ways of doing that. Some people will put on a headset and listen to their favorite tune. Other people will count from 100 down to 0. Other people will say, do a tongue twister, because you can't do that and do that at the same, do something else and be fearful at the same time. Your brain just can't handle all that going on at the same time. Now, there's a book out there that I have here. It's called Speaking Out Without Freaking Out, and it's by a guy called Matt Abrams. And this really dives into the whole subject of fear of public speaking. And he offers over 50 different ideas, solutions, remedies that you can use to, test out for yourself, develop your own anxiety management program. So with that, the conclusion, it is normal to feel nervous. And remember that your audience really wants you to succeed. Okay. There's very few places, maybe stand-up comedy, maybe a political rally where your opponents come up, where they show up and they want to see you fail. But in most parts, especially at Toastmasters, your audience wants you to succeed. And create your personal anxiety management toolbox. Now, there is a resource page with this presentation, and this PowerPoint is available through the divisional director. So with that, I wish you good luck. We'll open it right now to any questions you have, or maybe techniques that you have used to reduce your fear of public speaking.